Depth chart decisions are looming. The time is near. We'll get to our projections coming up.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, good morning. Happy Tuesday, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As we get close to the fall, sports are coming back, ladies and gentlemen. And guess what? FanDuel's there for you all the time. They're hooking up all customers with a booster, a bonus daily. There's something for everyone. Every day, all summer long and into the fall. Head to FanDuel.com to get started.
Okay, welcome in on this Tuesday. It is August 20th. Nebraska is just days away, Connor, from releasing its depth chart. We expect a depth chart on Monday ahead of the season opener, which is a week from Saturday against UTEP at Memorial Stadium. Man, it is really getting close. You know, most of the decisions have been made. I think we can assume, if not announced, but there are, let's say 5, 6, 7 that we're going to highlight today as remaining unknown, maybe still subject to change, where on our projected depth chart, there is an or listed between two names. So we went through an exercise and created depth chart projections. I think we're just going to stick with what we see as the ors, or we can go through the whole thing actually, because there's some interesting projections that we have, and we could discuss and potentially even debate at various spots.
Yeah. Okay. So let's pick holes in these too, if we can. So on, and Mitch, you have this up right on the Athletic. This is This is just right here. I have not written this. I was going to, and some other stuff got in the way late last week. Some more pressing matters to write about, and I ended up writing about the wide receivers and that reformed or remade room, the extreme makeover I called it, and this is just kind of sitting out there as like unpublished content. So we're getting it here first on the Locked On Pod. Okay, so let's start with quarterback then. Could you at all be convinced that on that first depth chart, it's Dylan Raiola or Heinrich Haarberg?
Man, I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't think that's going to happen, but I could probably be convinced that they would do it, just the way that this offseason is gone and knowing it's a true freshman. But I would be against that personally. In my opinion, that matters none. But I think Nebraska should embrace that it has a quarterback who's ready to go. We'll see what they decide. The way I projected it here was Dylan Raiola 1, Heinrich Haarberg 2.
Yeah, like you said, the way that they've handled it though is sort of interesting, and there's still, as of Monday night, there's still no announcement on who the quarterback is going to be. It didn't slip out in the Chasing 3 documentary for the week. There was very little quarterback involvement in that right. At all. It did highlight a player.
There was some video.
Yeah,
some video of Dylan.
He was out there. He was throwing the ball a couple times. It did highlight a player that we'll probably talk about who is in an or situation a little bit later when we talk about the defense. Right. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, I can see him doing it, but it would just be semantics. It would just, who's going to take the first snap, and it's going to be the freshman.
Yeah, that one I wouldn't even count. I wouldn't even count that. I really don't think you can have an or at quarterback unless it's just like a dead heat and you're going to be rotating possessions or whatever quarters. And that's not what Nebraska is going to be doing.
I agree. You won't, and you shouldn't probably. It would be best for your team if you didn't. So yeah, it's going to be a pretty clear 1-2 there. Dylan Raiola, Heinrich Haarberg, and then Daniel Kalen is certainly the third, but they'll only go too deep. Running back, I have no disagreements with this. Actually, if I did, it would be this. Like, you have it as Emmett Johnson 1, Ramir Johnson or Gabe Ervin 2. I think you could do or. You could do Emmett or Ramir or Gabe.
And it may look like that. That's That's a very real possibility. I put Emmett there because I think he's the best combination at this point of experience, health, pass protection, running ability, and intangibles.
Yep.
All of them have pretty good combinations of that, but Emmett gives you, I'm going to say, just a touch more of a well-rounded back than the other two at this point right now.
Well, I think mostly he's the most trusted guy probably in the room. He's the guy who's done it and shown it with his production. And he's stacked health, unlike the other two guys who are on the list. Like the other two, I think they're still looking for one to kind of break out amongst them. They'll all play. There's no doubt about it. It might even go beyond the three for guys who get regular carries as we finish out, August, and then as we get into the season. I think they're still kind of looking at that. But obviously, once you go, like maybe some of that is sorted out during the UTEP game, but once you go into Colorado, you're gonna have a pretty good idea who's gonna get the lion's share of the carries.
I think it's a feeling out process a bit at the start and just see who performs in the first game, maybe 2 games, and then by the time they get to week 3, there's going to be more definition as to how they distribute carries and reps. So, all right, I'm gonna lay out all of the wide receivers so we're not spending a lot of time on every single position. And there's 3 wide receiver spots that will be listed on the depth chart if Nebraska lays this thing out like it did last year, and I think that will be the case. They're in 11 personnel in our depth chart that we list. So 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers. I've got the starters as Jamal Banks, Isaiah Nayer, Janiran Bonner. I don't even think that's a debate. Like, those are the 3 guys who are going to be atop the depth chart alone in the 1 spot, I would say, without an or. Possibly you could see an or between Jamal Banks and Jalen Lloyd, but Jamal Banks is going to take probably the most reps of any wide receiver on this team. And I think Bonner in the slot is a guy who has earned it in a lot of ways by just putting in the time over the years and being loyal to this program. And he's obviously got a lot of talent, but he's a versatile guy. They really like him in that position. They think he's a weapon that is under the radar.
And wide receiver is a position where there's so many different combinations and permutations. So everybody who we'll talk about, there's let's see, 4, 3, there's 9 guys for receiver spots on this list. They all kind of do different things. They'll all end up playing in some form or fashion for Nebraska, some more than others. But at the X, basically it's Jamal Banks 1, Jalen Lloyd 2, but Jalen Lloyd is one of the top 3 receivers on this team. He just, they'll mix him in different ways. So, and then you have Banks X1, Lloyd or Isaiah Garcia Castaneda or Malachi Coleman at that spot. And then the other guys that would mix in would be Ja'Cory Barney, who's got a lot of run this fall, obviously, and
he's behind Nayer.
He's behind Nayer at the Y. And then Alex Bullock, who played 80% of Nebraska's snaps last year, he'll be in some sort of rotation for them. They like him as a blocker. And then the slot would be Janiran Bonner, rather, and then Carter Nelson, who has worked his way onto the field, it seems, in year 1.
Yeah, no or there, just Bonner, Nelson. I've got an or between Barney and Bullock. They're obviously much different skill sets, do different things. Right. Bullock's going to be in on running plays. Bonner's going to be in, or Barney's going to be in when they want to stretch the field. He's the true freshman. Probably will have an ability to separate himself and remove that or as the season goes on. But to begin the year, I think they're going to probably make him split some reps with older players. I would even update this as of Tuesday here, where we're talking, and say that Malachi Coleman might not be listed on the first one, just because he's been dealing with a groin injury, and you might just have 3 at that Banks and Lloyd spot with Garcia Castaneda, even with Jalen Lloyd. So they could also have Garcia Castaneda down at the spot that Nayer and Barney play. So I'm not certain how that exactly stacks up. I know Banks and Lloyd play the same position because I asked Jalen Lloyd about that last week, which one of the two older receivers he was working with, and he said it was Jamal Banks. So
it won't quite matter where they're listed on the depth
you'll
chart.
never notice in a game. Like
Right.
maybe it with the slot. The slot is the one, but the X and the Y, like they're interchangeable basically.
Yep. All right. So those are the wide receivers, and then let's finish out this segment with the last skill position, quote unquote, the hybrid skill position, and that's the tight end spot, where it's Thomas Fidone. We have Thomas Fidone or Nate Borkircher, and then Lindenmeyer is the two. Now, they all do different things, right? Fidone, out snapped Borkircher a year ago, but they were both on the field a lot. And then Lindenmeyer will obviously play, and he can kind of bring this sort of different H-back, like, is he gonna? He could block well enough. They could send him out on routes if they feel good about that. Like, so they all bring different things to the room. But if you're looking for like the star in the room, there's no doubt who that is, and that would be Fidone.
Lindenmeyer, future NFL player, according to Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield, I believe, was the other coach in that conversation. As Lindenmeyer described it, he was one of the guys featured in the Monday night edition of the Chasing 3 on YouTube. So, given the young guy hope, pushing the right buttons to make him work really hard. I know they like what the walk on from Papillion LaVista can do in the blocking game, and the practice video that was shown in the documentary, and we've seen this in the times we've been out at practice. He has soft hands. Lindenmeyer does. He catches the ball pretty well. So he may be a guy that is one of those surprise players as the season goes on. You look at him now and you go, oh, he's the number 3 tight end, but he could get significant reps and maybe end up being a weapon for Nebraska.
All right, Mitch, we'll come back. Let's get to a couple notes that we have on the offensive line. We might mix into the defense, but we'll basically use the depth chart and cover the entire show with it today. So stick with us here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. And first, a quick reminder to please subscribe, follow on Twitter at Locked On NEB. By the way, before we take that break, Mitch, did you see the tweet that we got within the last couple hours here on Monday night?
Which one is this?
So this is from B at the other Brian.
I saw this.
I don't know Mitch Sherman, but for some reason, this is what popped in my head when I heard his excitement on Locked On Nebraska about demolishing the family trampoline, and it is
Ben Stiller.
It is Derek Zoolander in the coal mine. For that, he's walking like this.
First of all, I do not own a shirt like that.
For the record, too, that's what I had in my head.
Man. Hey, update on the trampoline and the trash can. The sanitation company took it off of my driveway today. I was worried because it was sticking out like twice the distance from the ground as the lid goes on the trash can. They took it. It's gone. I don't know what it sounded like when it hit the inside of the receptacle in the moving vehicle, but I don't care because it's gone.
Gone like it never existed. All right. We'll be back after this.
Okay, Mitch Sherman here for a new sponsor to the Locked On Nebraska podcast, Ibotta. That's Ibotta. Ibotta, what is it? It's a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. You can earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, which we need, and toys. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. So while other apps just give you points that don't amount to much, Ibotta provides cash back that you can move into your bank account, your PayPal, or take as gift cards. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. Save on over 2,400 brands, shop at more than 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora. If you've got to demolish a trampoline, this is what you need to do in order to get the tools to make the job work. Best Buy and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just to try it out. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. So just go to the App Store or Google Play, download the free Ibotta app, and start earning cash back. That's Ibotta in the Google Play or the App Store with the code LOCKEDONCollege.
All right, welcome back. Connor Happer from 1620 The Zone in Omaha. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. I went back to work today. I saw we got a comment on our last YouTube video that said that I would never make it in the Navy because I took 3 weeks off for being a father. Luckily for me, I'm not in the Navy, and they offered it to me. The Navy would never offer 3 weeks of paternity. I don't know what the Navy does for paternity leave, but I took it. I just took what was given to me. I think that's a pretty military way of going about things. What say you, Mitch?
I wonder if the author of that comment served in the Navy in like the Vietnam War era, or if the military is perhaps more up to date on what it does with its paternity. Hey, look, I know when my kids were born, I took like 2 days off. So more power to you that you were able to get this. I have coworkers that I'm spending my day job hours around who take like 5 months off. And I'm talking about men in my work world who take months and months off when they become fathers. And if you get it, like if it's available to you, man, gobble it up.
I will note that I took less than was offered. I took much less than was offered. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there, maybe you'll have to rethink that Navy comment, Mr.
I mean, really all that matters in this discussion, you timed this so that you were back for football season, back on the air for football season. I mean, you actually should be commended by all just for that simple feat alone. You planned the birth of your child so that you could take this time off and be back before week 0.
I agree completely. Please use this video's YouTube comment section to thank me for my great service to this podcast and my radio show. Okay, on to the offensive line depth chart. So left to right starters, no oars. Turner Corcoran, Justin Evans, Ben Scott, Micah Mazuka, and Bryce Benhart. I wouldn't argue with any of those. That's the way I kind of see it as well.
Yep. Backups. Gunnar Gatula at left tackle, Henry Lutovsky or Tyler Kanak at left guard, Sam Sledge at center, Jason Machachak, otherwise known as Shake Shack, at right guard, and Grant Seagren at right tackle. We saw Shake Shack in a bit of the Chasing 3 doc on Monday night.
Walking back to the dorms in his flip-flops.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, there's a little bit of uncertainty on the backups and where they play exactly, left side or right side. Lutovsky's been out for most of preseason camp with that calf injury, or really all of preseason camp. I think he was on target if he'd been healthy to be the starter at right guard. I put him at left because I think that Evans, I don't know. I put him there because that's just what I felt like. And Tyler Kanak's been moving around between guard and tackle. I think with Gatula and Seagren seeming to lock down those spots as the backup tackles, that Kanak is a fit at guard right now. So Sledge is definitely the backup center. Machachak is a backup guard for sure at one of those spots. But, the main thing about this, and the guys who are going to play the vast majority of the snaps, are those first 5, and I'm very confident that they're correct.
The offense in general, just to wrap it up, like I mean, there's not many like, this guy's a surprise, and he really, and I think that's a credit to the guys who returned last year and have a lot of playing time under their belt, and then obviously the transfer wide receivers coming in and doing what they were supposed to do right away. But I mean, I think you could have made this depth chart and have it been like a name or two off of exactly what this is after spring ball or during spring ball. Not much has changed, Mitch.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of definition has arrived at the wide receiver spots and maybe at the backups on the offensive line, but otherwise, yeah, it's kind of as planned.
Should we hold just the whole defense for a big final segment here, or do we dip into some of it right here?
Let's do the D line, and then we'll get to the last two position groups after the break.
All right, so D tackle nose, you have Nash Hutmaker, one with Riley Van Poppel as his direct backup. And then the two end spots, Ty Robinson, one, Jamari Butler, the other one. There's no possible argument for any other combination there. And then their backups being Elijah Jeudy, Cam Lenhart, and James Williams. James Williams is a different player than Cam Lenhart is. James Williams is a situational player. And Jeudy obviously brings something different to the table than a guy like Lenhart does. You could tell that other defensive end spot is a little bit more athletic. One of them was a little bigger, taking on blocks. So they have different guys for different positions, and they've stacked it up along that defensive line.
As I'm looking at this, we've got 7 listed. I want to put one more on there. I think Vincent Jackson, the redshirt freshman out of Pennsylvania, is going to have a home here as a 3. And maybe he could work his way up to a number 2, or perhaps already has. I liked what I saw from him in the open practice way back on August 3rd, that first Saturday night. I don't know if he fits more at Nash's spot or at Ty Robinson's spot. So that'll be interesting to see when they open the season where he comes in and plays. I do think he's going to get into the season opener against UTEP next Saturday. One of the guys who's made a pretty good offseason move to provide depth on this D-line. And it's deep. I mean, you go 8 deep legitimately on the D-line, and that's before you get to a guy like Keona Davis, who's probably going to play more than 4 games. Well, maybe it'll just be 4, but if he only plays 4 games, that speaks to the depth that they have, and that means they stayed healthy.
Let me add another name in here who's not on here. Kai Wallen. He always gets some run with the coaches and players that we talk to. He'll figure to mix in for some playing time as well. So I think that's a spot where they'll probably have, for 3 spots, they'll probably have 9 guys play. Yeah. Obviously, 3 to 5 more than others, but probably as many as 9 guys rotate through on those spots.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe Wallen is penciled in at that DN spot behind Robinson and Jeudy, and then Vince Jackson goes behind Nash and Riley Van Poppel at the nose D tackle spot. So
it's a pretty stacked defensive line for sure.
All right, after the break, we will get to the linebackers and the secondary. Want to remind you before we take this break that since college football is back, also back is the Locked On College Football Podcast. It kicks off action with a live season preview at 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central on Tuesday, August 20th. That's tonight on the Locked On College 24/7 streaming YouTube channel. The 4-part series covers each of the 4 major conferences, discussion on the ACC, Big 10, Big 12, and SEC, all of the teams that have a shot at the expanded college football playoff. Nebraska discussion will be included, of course, in that Big 10 conversation. So be sure to check out this special streaming on the Locked On College 24/7 YouTube channel or on Amazon Fire TV, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'll be back after this.
All right, it's Happer here for the FanDuel Sportsbook. We indeed love sports. We're getting close to the NFL season. We're getting close to college football season. You guys have bets in mind. There's all sorts of things out there for you. So FanDuel's got you covered. All you got to do is open the app and throw in a bet or two. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So if you get some ideas for things that you're cooking up for football season, you win that first $5 bet, and then you are gifted $150 in bonus bets. So I would take advantage of that as well. Also, plenty more deals when you sign up for the FanDuel Sportsbook. So we'd encourage people to use the code LOCKED ON, FanDuel.com/locked on, and make every shot count for you during this football season or whatever else you'd like to bet on. That's with our friends from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Okay, closing out the show on this Tuesday, Mitch Sherman back with you. Connor Happer is alongside me. We want to mention one thing before we get back to the defensive depth chart projections. We've said a couple of times that Nebraska had its second episode in the preseason of the Chasing 3 documentary that came out on Monday night. We saw some personal stories on Luke Lindenmeyer, on Brody Tagaloa, on another guy on the defense that we're about to talk about here when we get to the linebackers. We also learned that Carter Nelson, while brave, is not a good singer.
No.
and that Danny Kalen can actually hold a tune. So that's a development for those true freshman buddies who had to go in front of the team. Maybe part of the freshman orientation that they do in the team meeting rooms. Carter, give him credit for going up there, but man, that was not all that pretty.
They did look comfortable, which is nice. Kalen looked really comfortable. I mean, when Matt Rule talks about the it factor, I think that's what he's talking about.
He did mention that.
Yeah, he gets up in front of the room and he's like just ripping. I can't remember what song he sang, but he did pretty well. He was really good. He looked like he had a choir background.
Yeah, Rules actually mentioned that about both of those guys, that they weren't afraid to sing in front of the team. So as odd as that looks on video, there's a purpose behind it in what they're trying to figure out about some of these guys and just whether they have the some of the intangibles that they're looking for to be able to contribute as true freshmen right away. So all right, back to the depth chart projections. We don't need to analyze that any longer. Linebacker. So at Jack linebacker, I've got MJ Sherman or Prince Will Umanmielen. Umanmielen. Is that it?
Umanmielen.
All right. I think that's an or. I think that's a definite or. Different skill sets. Prince Will's more of your traditional get after the passer. Can grow into a DN spot. He's at Jack linebacker right now as a true sophomore, about 250 pounds. MJ Sherman, much more experienced, the Georgia transfer. He's a senior and traditional linebacker, stand-up linebacker kind of guy. But in this 3-3-5, they like to put that guy out on the edge, kind of show a four-man front, and the Jack is the one that does that. So I think there's a nice compliment that the two of them have. John Bullock and Steph Thompson at one spot on the inside, and then Mekhi Bayer and Vincent Shavers, the true freshman, at the other spot inside, with the injury to Javen Wright, or the health situation with Javen Wright. I think those four are in line to play the most.
Yeah, a couple things on the linebackers. First of all, I do love that they highlighted MJ Sherman. That's a guy that we often forget about on the Chasing 3 documentary. Seems like he's in a better place from a football playing perspective than he was a year ago, when there was, a guy transfers from Georgia and there's high expectations immediately, and he wasn't much of a factor last year for Nebraska. So good to see that he's hung in there, and certainly will be an important piece to what they do this year. And then Prince Will. The other thing is, like, you have all these different, the Jack linebacker really is, a hybrid defensive lineman. You'll probably have to cover a little bit, be a little bit more athletic than some of those guys on the defensive line, just in the way you move. So they'll have some different things, some different guys do different things at that spot. And then it's the same thing at the inside linebacker, like, because you're left with just the two middle linebacker spots, quote unquote middle linebacker spots. You have to have different body types and skill sets at those spots, depending on what you think you're going to see. And so, at both of those positions, how we have them listed with Bullock and then Thompson and then Mekhi Bayer and then Vincent Shavers, like, there's a really good contrast with both of those spots. I think, Thompson is a little lengthier, can cover. Bullock would probably be middle thumper type. Same with, Bayer is a middle thumper guy, packs a punch, and Shavers can really move. They love his speed. Obviously, those guys possess the ability to do other things as well. But if I'm to like put him in a little corner, that's kind of how I would describe him. So I like how that position sets up. I don't know how much depth there is beyond that. That might be a concern eventually, but yeah, it's a good looking spot.
A couple names for depth here at this spot. Maverick Noonan at the Jack linebacker spot. He's somebody that people have probably forgotten about too. Was a standout in the spring last year, in the spring of 2023, as an early enrollee. The defender out of Elkhorn South, son of Danny Noonan, former Husker great, could you say? Former Husker standout and Dallas Cowboy. Maverick is in line to be back. He is back in practice and should see some playing time in depth situations. And then Vince Genatone at that inside spot. I think he's the next guy up without Javen Wright. He is, as we've mentioned several times, the Montana transfer from North Platte, who's just a track demon and needs to put that to use on the football field.
Gage Stenger is another guy who's got some run a little bit this fall as well. He could mix in for some playing time as well. All right. Quickly, we'll do the defensive backfield here. This one has gained a lot of clarity over the last week or so.
At least at the ones.
Yeah, definitely. So no Tommy Hill's going to play a corner spot. He'll be backed up by Sierra Wright, the transfer from USC, the actor Sierra Wright. The other corner is, according to Matt Rule, will be Marquise Buford, the older of the Buford brothers, and he'll be he has an interesting backup situation. We could talk about that one too. We have Jeremiah Charles listed, and then you have 2 safety spots and a rover. So really 3 kind of safeties. Isaac Gifford holds a spot. Deshaun Singleton holds a spot. Malcolm Hartzog holds a spot. And then you have some guys who can kind of, cross train and do a little bit of both as well. Kobe Bretzel mix in for some playing time. And who else? DeAndre Barnes might mix in for some playing time too.
I've got him listed there just because there's not a lot of depth at the inside spots in the secondary. I started going through it, and most of those guys play corner, like Mario Buford, Marquise's little brother. He plays corner. Dwight Boodle, younger brother of DiCaprio Boodle. He plays corner as a redshirt freshman. We mentioned Jeremiah Charles, who's a redshirt freshman. Jaden Doss, the converted wide receiver, I think is more of a corner, although perhaps he could slide inside. So DeAndre Barnes is just one of the few. I think they're thin in the backup safety spots right now. And that's why I have Marquise Buford, also listed as a safety, in addition to being a starter at corner. So the quicker you get Bly Hill back to fill one of those corner spots, if that's what he's ready to do after his solid spring, the more you allow yourself to be able to have some freedom at the safety spots to play a little bit of depth.
Dwight Boodle, Ramir Stewart, Amari Sanders have all gotten a little conversation this fall.
Ramir Stewart wasn't on the 120 to begin August. Sincere Safiula also was not on the 120 to begin August, but he's in camp now. Hey, a guy that I saw who had what looked like an incredible interception in the practice film that was on YouTube tonight, Caleb Benning. Not a name that we've heard much this spring, but don't completely write him off as somebody who's got a chance to play in game. I mean, of course, don't write him off. He's a true freshman.
Yeah.
But I think maybe there's an opportunity because some of that lack of depth at safety for him to get in and make a difference.
Don't be surprised when they play young guys. Just don't. They're going to play some young guys back there. And then kicker punter, as we finish it out, Brian Buschini's the punter, backed up by Camden Cook, which that one is, locked and sealed. And then I think you nailed it here. We have a straight up or situation at kicker going into the season, and that's not rowing the boat or that's an OR. John Hull and Tristan Alvano trying to battle it out for who's going to kick this year.
Yeah, got Hull listed ahead of him right now because that's the way that Matt Rule spelled it out on Saturday after the second major scrimmage. So, all right, that's what we project that Nebraska is going to come out with on Monday. We can cross-check with the real depth chart when it comes out and see where we're right and where we're wrong. That is also going to do it for the show on this Tuesday. Want to remind you or thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast with Spencer McLaughlin. He'll get you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find that link to Locked On College Football in the description today, so you don't need to search. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.